A splintless bogey was back and outstanding for the Utah Jazz. A mess happened in New Orleans and Dallas tonight, plus a Trends Monday. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks very much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can hit subscribe and hit the little bell button as well. And that will notify you anytime we do the show, or you can just hit follow on all of your podcast platforms. Thanks very much for tuning in today. Bojan Bogdanovic sets a Jazz franchise record with 11 threes in a game. It was also the fifth. Only 5 players in NBA history have ever hit more than 11 threes in a ball game. And the significance is that the splint is off his finger. So Bojan Bogdanovic, January against Houston, ended up with a avulsion fracture of his finger on his non-shooting hand, but it bothered him a tremendous amount in that period. In fact, since that day, and let's make sure we put these in perspective rather than just say the numbers. Bojan, for his career, and is a 46% shooter and a 39% shooter from three. In his 2 years with the Jazz, he's actually been 40. So he's 46-39 is his career. In the games in which he played with the splint on his finger, he shot 40% from the floor and 31% from three, 17 games. In that time period, his catch and shoot game, which is usually about 40%, was down to 34%. He was 28 of 62. His off the bounce three-point game was 6 of 23 for just 26%. I think talking to people that was, and I didn't ask Bogey about it, I didn't want to bother him about it, was you put the ball on the floor, you bring the left hand up. Now, talking to Bogey, he said that the splint made it so that it was slippery. So he couldn't get the texture. He couldn't move the finger, but when he brought the second hand into the ball, it was slippery, and he couldn't get the contact he wanted. And then on long threes, he was 4 of his last 19 on above the break threes. This is the first year in his entire career going into last night in which he was below 40% from three. So if you look at Bogey last night, that looks like the guy that we're used to seeing, unbelievable shooting. That's otherworldly. 11 of them. But let's go back to Bogey, who had a little bit of a, at times, rocky season this year prior to the injury. So we go to the, and he was playing with an injury on his other finger. But prior to the injury, Bogey's shooting 48% from the field and 40% from three. So he's right on his career numbers, 18 points a game for the first 42 games of this season. The minute he slips is the minute he puts the splint on the finger. So here's a guy who plays through pretty tremendous pain, sacrificing for the team, willing to have his numbers go down so he's there every day. Like, really an impressive, in a day and age where, guys are pretty darn numbers conscious and everything else, he's doing the opposite. And so here's 48% from the field, 40% from three prior to the injury. Right at all of his career numbers. Then he gets the injury, it slips, and he plays the first game in New Orleans without the splint. He looks uncomfortable. He goes 1 for 11. And last night, he goes 11 of 19, 11 of 18 from three. He has 5 rebounds. He has 3 assists. He scores 35 points last night playing without the splint on his finger. That's a game-changing thing for the Utah Jazz. Because one of the questions about the Jazz, truthfully, is are we that good a shooting team? And what's so interesting about this to me is we're the number one offense in the NBA. We continue to be. We've done the shows here on Locked On Jazz about this being the greatest, one of the greatest offensive teams of all time. Yet we're not the greatest offensive team shooting the way we were a year ago. A lot of this is because Rudy's getting to the rim, and when people are taking away Rudy to the rim, which is what Oklahoma City tried to do last night, we end up having some problems. But if you take, first of all, our catch and shoot three-point attempts are middle of the pack at 24 a game. We're a little below league average. We take a lot off the bounce threes. And then we're below league average at 36% on catch and shoot threes. Well, that's pretty dramatic change because last year we were the third best team in the NBA on catch and shoot threes at 41%. The year prior, we were the number one team in 1920 in the league in catch and shoot threes at 41%. Nobody was else was over 39. And now we've slipped to 36% on catch and shoot threes. Some of it's we're not as good a shooting team. So we're not actually. Rudy Gay to George Niang is a really big change. We're not. Joe Ingles a year ago was an unbelievable shooter. Joe Ingles this year wasn't, and Joe Ingles is no longer on our team. So we're not as good a shooting team. And it means that having Bojan Bogdanovic, who takes 5 catch and shoot threes a game, becomes even more vital. And if you look at kind of Bojan's catch and shoot numbers, same concept, and we start at the beginning of the season and we take it to January prior to the injury, take it to about the 17th before the injury, and you look at Bojan's catch and shoot numbers, and he's at 40%. And then what I just tell you, he was 34% with the splint. So if we can get Bojan back, boy, does that matter. Because this is not as great a shooting team, and it frankly needs a second scorer to help out Donovan. Bojan's more of a complementary scorer. Jordan's really that second scorer. One of the reasons we're not as good catch and shoot is Donovan. As great as Donovan's been all year, the one thing has not been as great as his catch and shoot game. He's gone from 42% to 34%. I feel like it's heating up. I was going to check kind of last 8 games or last 10 games. Feels as though Donovan's back to about his 40%. He's at 38% last 10 games, actually. So how about last 4 since the All-Star break? He is 53%. So Donovan seems to be fresh legs, heating that back up. But Bojan takes 5 a game at 39%. Jordan's at 31%. Donovan's at 33%. Royce is our best three-point shooter right now at 40%. And then it's Rudy Gay is at 31%, which was George Niang 40%. Daniel House is at 53% of the catch and shoot. Eric Pascal's at 39%. Mike's at 40%. So we should be able to get this back up. Jordan, obviously, a number that needs to improve from his 31% catch and shoot three-point shooting. It feels like it's getting better. Last year it was 37%. But we're not clicked in. We're still the number one offensive team in the league. So that's pretty interesting to me that shooting part of our game has not clicked in any impactful way, and yet we're still the number one shooting team in the league, number one offensive team in the league. We're still the number one offensive team in the league with Bogey being off. But Bogey back makes a tremendous impact for the Utah Jazz. He is the ultimate pro. Absolutely the ultimate pro. Question, wondering why Rudy Gay's numbers are compared to Eric Pascal's. Well, I just gave it to you. We'll talk about that coming up as well for you on who gets those minutes moving forward for the Utah Jazz. The mess in New Orleans, what happened and how basketball is a little bit of a funny game if you buy into it. We'll look at it as the Utah Jazz get ready for the Dallas Mavericks as well today, all coming up. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross, also in Logan. The Chevy truck lineup of the Silverado and the Colorado are simply remarkable. The SUVs, you know them well. It's the Utah County assault vehicles, the Suburban and the Tahoe. Plus, the Trax is the smaller version. The Blazer is just terrific. The Trailblazer is terrific. And the Equinox is really nice. Great setup of cars at Chevy. The Murdochs have been in Utah for over 80 years. They will not charge you more than MSRP on any of their vehicles. So give them a call today, or actually just email me at dlock09@gmail.com, and I'll set you up at Murdoch Chevy in Woods Cross or up in Logan. Stop by either of the two locations to find out what they can do for you. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. Where's my wrapper? Here's my wrapper. Coconut brownie chunk again today. A little nervous about the lack of coconut brownie chunk. Built Bar people, I need my coconut brownie chunk. Coconut brownie chunk is my favorite Built Bar. It was my breakfast before we did the show. I will have my oatmeal later. I'll give you some road updates because that's what you've been asking for. But it is the greatest protein ever because it tastes like a candy bar. The Puffs mix box are still available. Coconut marshmallow, ruby chocolate, banana cream pie, churro, and lemon dip cheesecake. And then all the great regular bars that you're used to, plus limited release caramel almond delight available for you as well. The Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar but has just 130 calories, 2.5 fat grams, 4 grams of sugar, 6 grams of fiber, and 17 grams of protein. And I'm telling you, the marshmallow infused protein of the Puffs truly does feel like dessert. And I wish I had done that instead of the bag of hot tamales on our bus from Oklahoma City to Dallas last night. Fun little times. People were super interested about the road, so I think I'll give a few updates. 2 fabulous restaurants I went to. I went to Laguna Madre, which was on the New York Times 50 most exciting restaurants list in New Orleans. It's actually a Mexican restaurant. It's about a 5 or 6 course tasting menu, prefix. They just bring it. And it was kind of felt like real Mexican, not Tex-Mex, not Chevys, not Chili's. Pretty nice, fabulous, kind of not what you'd expect in New Orleans, but enjoyed it. Great, cool vibe. Pink neon lights when you walked in. It's in the back of a house that they've turned into a restaurant, kind of a speakeasy vibe to it. Great customer service. That was super cool. And then in Oklahoma City, I went to one of the best meals I've ever had in my life. A place called None Such that was ranked in 2018 as Bon Appetit's new restaurant of the year. Another tasting menu, 15 course, small little bites, super spendy, but incredible. If for some unforsaken reason you have to have a stopover in Oklahoma City in your life and you're willing to spend money on food, I view it as a fancy dinner is no different than going to a sporting event. So, and I don't drink, so it's not as expensive for me. So I'm totally willing to do these things. It was incredible. One of the best meals I've ever had. Creativity of the chef, tasting menu flavors, mixture, really cool scene, U-shaped bar where everyone's seated, probably seats 30. Bring out very creative, very great flavors. The Thai chocolate afterwards was great. The little pasta piece was amazing. The pickle, it was great. So anyway, those are your little updates. This trip, we're flying commercial instead of with a charter. So we actually decided to bus from Oklahoma City to Dallas, which was uneventful, but it was, just something different. Good bonding for the broadcast crew. As we've just done things a little differently on this trip than we usually do, hoping to get back to normal on the next trip. But just glad to be back here on the road. It's incredible how much I have been able to kind of give you guys details and interactions and things that I wouldn't have noticed or been aware of otherwise by being back on the road. So it's great. All right. So what happened in New Orleans? I mean, one is it happens, which is such a crappy answer, and fans hate that. 2, New Orleans came with a really good collective vibe, and we didn't, and energy. 3, length causes us a lot of problems, and New Orleans is crazy long. Doesn't obviously call Jokic a bunch of problems, but it is crazy long. The one I would share with you that I think is just kind of funky, and this is just like how the NBA works, and they thumped us, so I'm not about to turn it the other way. But it's interesting to me how the game works. So it's 18-10 with 5 minutes left, and they're getting us. And Bogey gets a good look three with 5:16 left and misses it. We get an offensive rebound kick out to a wide open three to Don. And he misses. We actually get a stop, come down, and Bogey misses a layup. We foul Ingram after Whiteside loses a steal out of frustration, and he hits 2 free throws. And if we had made that 3 by Bogey, now you can't make every shot, it's 18-13. If you make the layup or the 3 by Donovan, it's 18-15. Instead, we miss those 2 shots. Ingram gets fouled on kind of a frustration play. They come back, hit a bucket. It's suddenly 22-10. Then Forrest turns it over, and now we don't rotate. Snell gets a wide open 3. It's 25-10, and like the night's over. I mean, it was over right then. They had collective juice. They were going. They were rolling, and it is, and I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that we were about to win that game otherwise or anything of that nature. But it's those little sequences in the game of basketball are funky to me because generally we kind of fight through these things and get back in the game, or if we're down a little bit, we kind of work our way back into it. And in turn, in this case, it was like it just went awry and we didn't have, and it was gone. Like, and I don't think we would. They're playing great and collective, and their length bothers us, and all those things are real. But it did feel like that actually was one of those games where like, whoa, like make or miss here, and it just goes. Maybe not. I mean, we didn't have a lot of juice, and we turned it over a lot, and we played into their hands, and we didn't understand how to play them, and didn't understand what their length was doing. So I would, it was not a particularly good game by the Jazz. In fact, it was kind of a mess. But it was worth noting just kind of that. I thought that was interesting looking back at the first quarter. Like, wow, like you wonder what would have happened. But nonetheless, we got hammered. Question coming in. Can you explain why the losses the Warriors and Grizzlies have is more important than the games back in the standings? So let's look at the standings for a second and understand what the question is. It's a good one. So the premise of this is that good teams win, don't lose. And so we have games in hand. So by not playing also, we can't lose. So we've played 50. We haven't actually played these games yet. We actually now just have to go win them. We actually have played less. I didn't realize. I thought we played more. So Memphis has played 66. They've played 64. We've played 63. So in theory, the idea is that good teams win. And since good teams win 2-1 of their losses, if you're equal in the loss column and you think you're going to win your games, then you make up those extra games. The fact that we're short games, the assumption on this is that we're going to win those games. Now, we're 8-2 in our last 10. Memphis is 6-4 in their last 10, and Warriors are 2-8 in their last 10. We're a game and a half ahead of Dallas. By the end of tonight, it could be a half a game. Or we could have really eliminated Dallas from the conversation. I would be stunned, honestly, if we won the 5th game of a 9-game road trip against a Dallas team that's hot. Luka didn't play. It's their last game, though. We could, in theory, we catch Memphis and the Warriors. We have games left with both of them. We play the Warriors on the 2nd of April and Memphis on the 5th of April. We play Dallas tonight, and we play Dallas here on the 27th as well. So we have 4 games left this year against these teams that we're all surrounded by. Denver's only 2.5 back, by the way, and Jokic is superhuman. That night last night is just astronomical. In overtime, Nikola Jokic last night, if you didn't catch this, for Denver in a 138-130 win, had 46 points, 12 rebounds, 11 assists, 4 blocks, 3 steals on 16 of 22 shooting. Played 43 minutes. And beat New Orleans 138-130 in OT. Incredible. The fact that Denver is 12 games against 500 and their second best player is either Aaron Gordon or Will Barton is pretty incredible. Like, they don't have a second best player in the top 100 players in the NBA. I would guess if you go back to all those lists at the beginning of the year, I would really be surprised if Aaron Gordon or Will Barton was in either of those lists. And they should get Jamal Murray back at some point. As we're learning with Klay Thompson, I'm not always sure that that's a positive. But Jamal Murray is such a stud that it probably is. Another question came in about wondering what Rudy Gay's numbers are versus Eric Paschall's numbers. Eric Paschall's numbers are way better than Rudy Gay's. So there's just no question. Rudy Gay just has not found his footing yet. It's been going on for a while. And it's been, heel surgery, followed by COVID, followed by non-COVID, followed by knee injury. Like, it's kind of been a season that can't get started. His last 10 games, he's shooting 35% for the floor and 24% from 3. That's before last night, which he was, I think, 1 for 5. He's 6 of his last 27 on above the break threes. I think that's now 6 of his last 30. But it's not new. Since December 1, he's 37% from the floor and 28% from 3. Since January 1, he's 35% from the field and 26% from 3. But it also hasn't been consecutive playing time for him at all. So if I'm, we know what Eric Paschall is. That's the kind of the good thing of the season. We know exactly what he is, what he brings, what he can do. He can play a little isolation. He can shoot it adequately. He shot it much better than we ever expected. He can move it. He can do some really interesting things defensively. He's big and strong. He's a fair rebounder for his position at 6'6". He's a little. So he does he can do a bunch of things. The ceiling for the Jazz, I talked about this in POSTCAST. The ceiling for the Jazz is bigger if Rudy Gay at 6'8", 250 can get going. And, Rudy Gay has played this year. He did not play a game until the 18th of November. And then he played 24 games in a row. But then he played a game. Then he played 2 games. Then he was inactive again. Then he played 7 games. Then he was inactive again. And now he's played 4 games. Like, let's let him play it out for a while. See if we can get him 10, 15 games in a row. See whether or not he can regain his game, get his legs back underneath him. I mean, he's missed 9 straight threes, which is unusual. It's obviously his shooting is just way off. It's, whatever went wrong somewhere in the middle of January actually is not, helping, is not gotten back. I mean, he's about 11% in his last 9 games. So this is the nadir. And let's see if he can pull out of it. Because our best chance of winning over the course of is having him continue to do it. Now, unless, of course, there's a chance that he needs back-to-back rest, then you don't play him tonight. But otherwise, I think you can do it. Today's show is brought to you by betonline.net. The basketball season is in full swing. The March fun is ahead of us. And the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to be. BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcast news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile service to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Jazz of the Dallas Mavericks tonight. Mavericks are playing super well. The Spencer Dinwiddie, Dallas Bertans trade for the sometimes available Kristaps Porzingis has turned out to be a steal. They played Dorian Finney-Smith as the center the other night against the Sacramento Kings when they were short guys. Finney-Smith's development might be the biggest problem in this matchup for the Jazz. Obviously, Luka. But what the Jazz used to do to Finney-Smith is they used to go guard Finney-Smith with Rudy Gobert. But Dorian Finney-Smith is now shooting 38% from three. So you can't do that with him anymore in the way that you used to be able to. You can't leave Rudy Gobert off in the middle of the lane and play that defense. The Jazz are doing some things, by the way, where they're playing defenses that are completely postseason based. Jalen Brunson's been a little bit of a powerhouse for the Jazz to deal with at times as well. He's shooting 50% from the field and 39% from three for the season. And now they have the third ball handler, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Dinwiddie's been amazing for them so far. Dinwiddie's averaging 18 points a game, shooting 56% and 41% from three. And Davis Bertans, who was a disaster shooting the ball in Washington, has been a little bit better for them this year's 34% from three and been a threat. They're really good. They're one of the hottest teams in the NBA. In fact, the Jazz win over them is one of the few things that shows they've had any problems. In fact, they have won 6 of their last 7, the only loss being against the Jazz. They have won 10 of their last 12 overall, and with real wins. Sixers, Hawks, Clippers, Heat, Pelicans, Warriors, Lakers, Warriors, Kings. And today they're home, and they have not traveled a great deal. They had a 5-game road trip, or 3-game road trip right out of the break, where they started in Utah, went to the Warriors and Lakers. Now they're home for an extended run. They do have an East Coast trip similar to ours coming up. All right, trends Monday. Luka, by the way, the key is keeping him off the foul line and keeping his threes down. That's what the Jazz did well against him the other night. All right, trends Monday. Let's look at the last 2 weeks and see who's doing what in the NBA. The top offensive team in the NBA is Minnesota over the last 2 weeks. They're also 5-1. Milwaukee, Boston, for all the talk of their defense, their offense is 3rd best. Philadelphia with Harden, 4th best. Dallas is the 5th best offense in the NBA over the last 2 weeks. Atlanta is 6th. We are 9th. Teams that just cannot score recently: Portland, Lakers, Orlando, Toronto, Houston, Oklahoma City. Toronto's interesting in there. Lakers 29th in the league offensively. Portland is 5 points worse than anyone else in the league offensively. Teams that are defending the best of anyone in the NBA, the Pelicans are number 1 in the league defensively over the last 2 weeks by a large margin. The Clippers 2, Denver 3, Miami 4, Orlando 5. That's impressive for that young group. Philadelphia 6. Teams that are not defending: Portland 30th, Brooklyn 29th, San Antonio 28th, Utah 27th. 4-1 in the last week while being the 27th ranked defense in the NBA. Warriors are 26th without Draymond. Washington 25th. We also like to look at the last 2 weeks. Now, this last 2 weeks, in all fairness, is a little funky. Or last 10 games, excuse me. That's the last 2 weeks. We like to look at the last 10 games. This is a little funky because it includes the All-Star break. So the best offensive teams are Atlanta's number 1, New Orleans is 2, Pelicans or Celtics are 3, Dallas is 4. The Bucks are 5, Minnesota is 6 instead of 1. We're 8. Teams that can't score: Thunder, Magic, Raptors, Blazers, Rockets, Lakers. Similar, a little bit different order. Best defensive teams in the last 10, Denver Nuggets. It's incredible how Jokic has gone from a liability defensively to good. Heat, Clippers, Celtics, Suns, Pelicans. As the 6 best defensive teams. Teams not defending over the last 10, Houston, Portland, Warriors, Indiana, Milwaukee, Detroit, and Brooklyn. Over the last 10 games, the hottest team in the NBA is the Celtics, followed by the Pelicans, the Suns, The Nuggets, the Heat, the Mavericks, and the Jazz are the same at 6.5, and they match up tonight. That is Locked On Jazz today. Have a good one. Should be fun. Jazz and Dallas, back end of a long road trip. But we'll see if our guys have any juice. They all played 35 minutes last night. Mike Conley will be back in the lineup